Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Panay, and in today's podcast, I'll be reading an essay I wrote called Before the Dawn. You might be familiar with the phrase, the darkest hour is before the dawn. And that's what this essay is focusing on. It's focusing on the pain associated with letting go of our ego and the whole process of forgiveness. The course has some lovely passages, and it's important to hold in mind where we are heading, the goal we are heading towards, and the benefits of practicing forgiveness. Because without an understanding of where we are going, the painful part, the difficult part of going through the process of letting go of the ego can seem too much, and we can wonder what on earth is going on. I'm practicing forgiveness. I'm focusing on what I want to be my experience in the world. I want a more peaceful experience, and yet I'm finding it quite painful at times, difficult, and just life generally isn't turning out all wonderful since I've begun this process of forgiveness as described in the course. In fact, things seem to be shaken up a whole lot more. Well, that's what this essay addresses. The darkest hour is before the dawn. Sometimes it's in those really dark, hard times where we are on the cusp of letting go of a huge part of our past associated with ego identification, with shame and guilt. And this explains why that process can be so painful. The other side of that process is the liberation from all that shame and guilt in the past. But why is it painful to actually have to go through the letting go of all that has limited us, really? That's what this essay focuses on. So let's begin. Before the Dawn, Part 1. While the course contains some beautiful passages relating to love and light, it also describes the discomfort we're likely to encounter as we apply its principles of forgiveness. There are two major sources of this discomfort: resistance and the thought reversal involved in accepting the course's principles. So here's a subtitle: Resistance. The following words from the Song of Prayer pamphlet highlight the pain of looking at our guilt, the bedrock of the ego thought system, in order to relinquish our identification with it. Guilt must be given up and not concealed, nor can this be done without some pain, and a glimpse of the merciful nature of this step may for some time be followed by a deep retreat into fear. Of particular note in this passage are the words given up. This implies that there is a part of us that wants to hold on to our guilt. Indeed, the Course talks of the hanging on to guilt, its hugging close and sheltering, its loving protection and alert defence. Our attachment to guilt is why we find it difficult to forgive others, to withdraw our projections of guilt, and then to forgive ourselves. The cause of our resistance is our attachment to the self we think we are, and that we have identified with for so long. And just as it is difficult and painful to lose someone who has been close to us for many years, it is also painful to lose an identification that has provided a refuge. All of us think our ego identification protects us in some way. Our ingrained defences and habits have been our chosen armour for getting by in the world. We also don't want to lose our sense of specialness, even if it's a sense of being especially flawed, unworthy, or sinful. The ego self, identified with the body, is separate from others, from God, and is unique. The pain of our grievances and self-accusations is more easily tolerated than we think because we're more afraid of the all-encompassing love of God that lies beyond them. We don't want to lose our ego self within an undifferentiated oneness. We want to stand out as something different. We are, in effect, afraid of our redemption. And here's a quote from the Course. You could look even upon the ego's darkest cornerstone without fear if you did not believe that, without the ego, you would find within yourself something you fear even more. You are not really afraid of crucifixion. Your real terror is of redemption. You realise that, by removing the dark cloud that obscures it, your love for your Father would impel you to answer his call and leap into heaven. You believe that attack is salvation because it would prevent you from this. Now we have another subtitle, Resistance and the Authority Problem. There is another element to our resistance, and that is our desire to be autonomous, to be the boss of us. The perceived separation from God was partly brought about by our desire to be noticed as something apart from the all, and partly by a wish to be our own authority, the essence of the authority problem. Here's a quote from the Course. The problem everyone must decide is the fundamental question of authorship. All fear comes ultimately, and sometimes by way of very devious routes, from the denial of authorship. The offence is never to God, but only to those who deny him. To deny his authorship is to deny yourself the reason for your peace, so that you only see yourself in segments. This strange perception is the authority problem. We don't want to be restored to our proper place because we think it would diminish us. Quote, "You have built your whole insane belief system because you think you would be helpless in God's presence. You are afraid it would sweep you away from yourself and make you little, because you believe that magnitude lies in defiance and that attack is grandeur." A core ego principle is one or the other. In order for me to have power in a relationship, the other person must have less power. That's what we believe. Therefore, if we defer to God by being receptive to his will, we think we have lost the upper hand. The reflection of God's will for us in this world is to practice forgiveness, and so holding on to grievances and our guilt is a means of defiance. Indeed, we like the idea of our autonomy so much that we'd prefer to do things on our own, in our own way, even if it hurts us. And just as an aside here, I'm reminded of the terrible twos. If you have any experience with a toddler around that age, you will know that toddlers do enjoy being defiant. Okay, back to the essay. But as the Course states, though our tolerance for pain may be high, it's not without limit. To accept that God's will for us is also our own, that forgiveness offers us everything we want, is the way to accepting our true inheritance and true power, a power that is shared by everyone as being a part of everything. Quote, "Who assumes a power that he does not possess is deceiving himself. Yet to accept the power given him by God is but to acknowledge his Creator and accept his gifts, and his gifts have no limit. To ask the Holy Spirit to decide for you is simply to accept your true inheritance." End of quote. A reflection of true power in this world is the ability to choose to listen to our inner teacher, whose lessons will lead us to a more consistent experience of peace, not contingent on external circumstance. We shut God out by not listening to our inner teacher and by judging others. Importantly, this doesn't mean that we should consciously pose a worded question to the Holy Spirit every time there is a decision to be made throughout the day. This is likely to have a cramping effect on the mind, which would hinder communication. Quote, "Does this mean that you cannot say anything without consulting him? No, indeed. That would hardly be practical. If you have made it a habit to ask for help when and where you can be confident that wisdom will be given you when you need it. Prepare for this each morning. Remember God when you can throughout the day. Ask the Holy Spirit help when it is feasible to do so. And thank him for his guidance at night. And your confidence will be well-founded indeed." End of quote. Meister Eckhart, the 14th century Christian mystic, spoke of having an inner movement towards God, rather than constantly trying to use words to develop or maintain a connection. Likewise, the Course tells us to never forget that the Holy Spirit does not depend on your words. He understands your requests of your heart and answers them." End of quote. The humility of our ego, then, is needed to help overcome our resistance. We need to be willing to choose the second place to gain the first. We also need to develop trust that the process of forgiveness will truly give us what we want, that the pain of losing the devil we know will be worth it. In part 2 of this article, we look at the discomfort caused by the thought reversal inherent in the forgiveness process. Before the Dawn, Part 2. Part 1 of this article explored how resistance to losing our separate identity, our specialness, and to losing our autonomy, being our own boss, makes the process of undoing our ego identification painful. Here in Part 2, we explore another cause of our pain, the instability and confusion we encounter as we reverse the ego-based thinking that has guided our lives. Thought reversal. The ego thought system is based on separation, differences, and opposites, all of which relate to form, to what we can see, hear, feel, or touch. Another way of describing form is to say that it is specific. To specify something is to draw a boundary around it, distinguishing it from something else. In contrast to the ego's thought system, the Holy Spirit's is based on the reality of a formless, abstract unity in which, quote, "Nowhere does the Father end, the Son begin as something separate from him." Since the foundations of these thought systems are poles apart, moving from an ego orientation to a right-minded one will cause periods of instability and uncertainty as we change our upside-down orientation. Quote, "As these false underpinnings are given up, the equilibrium is temporarily experienced as unstable. However, nothing is less stable than an upside-down orientation. The thought reversal that causes us the most discombobulation involves the notions of giving and receiving. In the right-minded thought system, giving and receiving are the same. This principle is expressed in the Holy Spirit's lesson, to have, give all to all. The Holy Spirit's lesson reflects the reality of an abstract oneness, where what we give we must also receive, and this is true on the level of the mind outside time and space. However, because we experience ourselves as a specific person in a specific body in a world of specifics, we believe that to give something is then to be without it, a fundamental principle within the ego thought system. We project our guilt onto someone else, for example, thinking that this rids us of it. The belief that we are essentially our separate bodies contributes to this, and so the idea that we are all one is difficult to grasp in any meaningful way. Quote, "One brother is all brothers. Every mind contains all minds, for every mind is one. Such is the truth. Yet do these thoughts make clear the meaning of creation? Do these words bring perfect clarity with them to you? What can they seem to be but empty sounds? Pretty perhaps, correct in sentiment, yet fundamentally not understood nor understandable. The mind that taught itself to think specifically can no longer grasp abstraction in the sense that it is all-encompassing. We need to see a little that we learn a lot." End of quote. We connect with the truths that minds are joined and that giving and receiving are the same, or we learn a lot, by practicing forgiveness with the specific jobs, partners, parents, children, friends, etc. of our life. Quote, "Complete abstraction is the natural condition of the mind, but part of it is now unnatural. It does not look on everything as one. It sees instead but fragments of the whole. Thus were specifics made, and now it is specifics we must use in practicing." It's through the process of forgiveness that we see a little, as we experience the peace that comes from giving forgiveness rather than projecting guilt in various relationships, we'll be able to generalize the lesson that to give and receive are the same, that to bless another is to bless ourselves in recognition of the holiness we share. In contrast, if we try to rid ourselves of our guilt by projecting it out, not only will the guilt remain, but we will have reinforced it because teaching and learning are the same. Quote, "When a brother behaves insanely, you can heal him only by perceiving the sanity in him. If you perceive his errors and accept them, you are accepting yours. If you want to give yours over to the Holy Spirit, you must do this with his. How is this different from telling you that what you teach, you learn?" And here's another quote. "Any situation must be to you a chance to teach others what you are and what they are to you. No more than that, but also never less." End of quote. If someone appears to act unkindly, for example, but we see beyond the behaviour to the thought of fear behind it and accept that they are still a part of Christ, we have learnt that our own mistakes have not affected our holiness. Here's a subtitle: Unholy Relationships and the Getting Concept. Another reason why the Holy Spirit's lesson, to have, give all to all, is a major departure from the ego thought system is that it represents the first step in the undoing of the getting concept. Quote, "The ego never gives out of abundance because it was made as a substitute for it. That is why the concept of getting arose in the ego's thought system." End of quote. Believing we have left the totality of our Creator and lost the wholeness and abundance of ourself, we identify with deficiency and vulnerability and seek to make up for our perceived lack. The Course calls any relationship in which we try to get something to make up for our feelings of insecurity an unholy or special relationship. It is special because it assumes that a particular person, activity or object can offer us something of more value than someone or something else. If forgiveness is our goal, then every encounter is of equal value in that it offers us the same opportunity to practice forgiveness. Now back onto special relationships. We might seek for approval in intimate relationships, for example, to keep our sense of unworthiness at bay. And as long as a relationship seems to meet these needs, it is filled with special love. When our partner doesn't give us what we think we need, however, we project our hatred and guilt onto them, and they become an object of special hate. If only you'd give me what I want, I could be happy, we think. When we've had enough of the pain inherent in the special love-hate relationship, for our ego needs can never be fully satisfied, our sense of incompleteness never repaired, and choose the Course's way forward, we won't be immediately met with rainbows and daffodils. On the contrary, we're likely to experience significant inner conflict due to the absolute thought reversal involved in our shift of purpose. We are changing our focus from meeting the defensive needs of our separate, specific, individual self to meeting our shared need to remember our holiness. In effect, our goal is shifting from what we can get from someone to what we give or teach by way of our perceptions of them. With this shift in purpose, the relationship can for a while seem, quote, disturbed, disjunctive, and even quite distressing. And here's a quote from the Course. "Be comforted in this. The only difficult phase is the beginning. For here, the goal of the relationship is abruptly shifted to the exact opposite of what it was. This is the first result of offering the relationship to the Holy Spirit to use for His purposes. In its unholy condition, your goal was all that seemed to give it meaning. Now it seems to make no sense. Many relationships have been broken off at this point, and pursuit of the old goal re-established in another relationship." So, We go from special relationship to shifting the goal to forgiveness, and then the ego arcs up. Because without the goal of specialness, and we're just at the very beginnings of setting a new goal, the relationship seems to have no purpose whatsoever. It seems to make no sense. And the hugely uncomfortable feeling associated with that can lead us to think, that's it, I'm out of here, and we'll go establish another special relationship, another relationship with specialness as our goal. Perhaps a different person will satisfy me the way this person couldn't or didn't. Yeah, that is the difficulty at this part of the relationship when the goal is shifted. Carrying on. What also adds to our difficulty is that often this shift seems to be induced by external circumstances that make pursuit of our former goals no longer viable. If, for example, the financial status of my partner provides me with a sense of status I crave, but they unexpectedly lose their job and future work prospects, I can no longer depend on the relationship to meet this goal. What, then, is my goal for the relationship to be? As stated in the section, The Development of Trust, how can we recognise the lack of value in ego goals unless we are in a position where we must see things differently? What induces us to trust that forgiveness will give us everything we want rather than our special love bargains? And here's a quote from that section, The Development of Trust. First, they must go through what might be called a period of undoing. This need not be painful, but it usually is so experienced. It seems as if things are being taken away, and it is rarely understood initially that their lack of value is merely being recognised. How can lack of value be perceived unless the perceiver is in a position where he must see things in a different light? He is not yet at a point at which he can make the shift entirely internally. And so the plan will sometimes call for changes in what seem to be external circumstances. These changes are always helpful. End of quote. Instead of reinforcing my sense of insecurity and incompleteness by trying to get you to make up for them, I can learn of my innate abundance and wholeness by practicing forgiveness with you. Again, until we embrace the new goal, trusting that it will give us what we truly want, the situation is likely to be experienced as very dicey. This is the time for faith, we are told. For now the old goals are gone, the relationship can seem purposeless. Quote, a sense of aimlessness will come to haunt you and to remind you of all the ways you once sought for satisfaction and thought you found it. Forget not now the misery you really found, and do not breathe life into your failing ego. For your relationship has not been disrupted, it has been saved. End of quote. Instead of unconsciously bargaining with each other to meet our separate goals, which usually are to fulfill our defensive needs, we can now walk beside each other by realising our shared goal. Quote, you are very new to the ways of salvation and think you have lost your way. Your way is lost, but think not this is loss. In your newness, remember that you and your brother have started again together. End of quote. It's not necessary for all parties to consciously be a partner in the forgiveness process for it to be effective. The dissociation from God, quote, is healed in both of you as you become aware of the call for God in him and thus acknowledge its being. End of quote. To start again, together with our brother, means that we are no longer excluding them by seeing them as something separate that can fulfill our needs, but as someone whose holiness we share. It means we shift our focus from what we can get from them, a smile, praise, to what we give, which means how we choose to perceive them. In conclusion, a period of significant inner turbulence is incidental to the process of undoing our identification with the ego. Rather than a sign that things are falling apart or that our spiritual aspirations have been misguided, feelings of instability, anger, anxiety, and depression are familiar companions for those willing to endure the 180-degree shift in perspective that the Course's process of forgiveness initiates. We are assured, however, that the ends more than justifies the means. For if we, quote, but knew the glorious goal that lies beyond forgiveness, end of quote, our trust would be complete and our dedication strong. That concludes the essay. In addition to this essay, I would like to read out a part from the course called The Branching of the Road from chapter 22. This section relates very well to the idea of moving on from the past. One of the things that can stop us from really stepping forward and letting go of the past is the idea that we have lost something in the past, that we wish things could have been different. We feel that we were deprived of certain things, that, if only we had that, our life could be very different now. We would be happy. I would be doing this, that, or the other. That keeps us rooted to the past. And it's saying that there's something that the world can provide that would make us happy and give us inner peace. And if only we had have had that, we'd be okay now. That keeps us rooted to the movie, to the ego script. The only value in our past is to get us to a place of dissatisfaction with the world, of dissatisfaction with our experience in the world, so that we look for another way, a way that isn't provided by the world, a spiritual way, a way out from our pain. That is the only value to all the trials and tribulations of the past. This is expressed really well in The Branching of the Road, and I'm going to read it out now. When you come to the place where the branch in the road is quite apparent, you cannot go ahead. You must go either one way or the other. For now, if you go straight ahead, the way you went before you reached the branch, you will go nowhere. The whole purpose of coming this far was to decide which branch you will take now. The way you came no longer matters. It can no longer serve. No one who reaches this far can make the wrong decision, although he can delay. And there is no part of the journey that seems more hopeless and futile than standing where the road branches and not deciding on which way to go. It is but the first steps along the right way that seem hard, for you have chosen, although you still may think you can go back and make the other choice. This is not so. A choice made with the power of heaven to uphold it cannot be undone. Your way is decided. There will be nothing you will not be told if you will acknowledge this. So again, here's a part in the course that talks about the first few steps along the right way seem to be hard. When we begin our practice with the course and we have that radical shift in the purpose of our relationships, and we start to feel the lessening of our identification with the ego can strike back. There can be a retreat into fear, as we talked about in the essay, where we think, oh no, I'm going to lose something valuable. I'm going to lose this self that I've identified with for so long, this self-concept of myself as the helper, the rescuer, the motivator, the whatever label you can attribute to yourself. Maybe you were the hugely successful entrepreneur, anything. That strong identification as a particular type of person, having a particular role in the world, that's how this kind of thing can manifest. And it's like, well, without that, I'm just left with this void. Well, who am I? But the Course is urging us not to try and fill that void or retreat back to where we were before, to the strong ideas about ourselves and others that we had before. So I'll continue on with some reading here. And so you and your brother stand here in this holy place before the veil of sin that hangs between you and the face of Christ. Let it be lifted. Now, what I like about this section is it also talks about how you don't have to be students of the course, you and this other person who you are practicing forgiveness with or perhaps in a relationship with. It only needs to be one person. And that's what this next paragraph is going to emphasise. And so you and your brother stand here in this holy place before the veil of sin that hangs between you and the face of Christ. Let it be lifted. Raise it together with your brother, for it is but a veil that stands between you. Either you or your brother alone will see it as a solid block, nor realise how thin the drapery that separates you now. So either ourselves or somebody else will see it as a solid block. So they're not seeing it through the eyes of forgiveness. They're not perhaps even aware of things like the Course in Miracles way of perceiving things. But it doesn't matter, so we'll go on. Yet it is almost over in your awareness, and peace has reached you even here before the veil. But that solid block, seeing it that way, is almost over in your awareness. And that's all that matters. And so peace has reached you even here before the veil. Think what will happen after. The love of Christ will light your face and shine from it into a darkened world that needs the light. And from this holy place, he will return with you, not leaving it nor you. You will become his messenger, returning him unto himself. And now I'll skip to paragraph 6. To all who share the love of God, the grace is given to be the givers of what they have received. And so they learn that it is theirs forever. Again, as you might know from my previous podcast, the emphasis in the course is on to know that you have something, give it. It's in the giving that you realise that you have what you are giving. And so if you give love and give wholeness through practicing forgiveness, through remembering the Christ, the Holy Spirit within yourself and in somebody else, then you can't have been deprived of anything of any value in your past. And therefore, there is no reason to hold on to the past. The psychologist Erik Erikson described how acceptance of our past, our lives, and the possibilities that have been afforded to us plays a role in developing a sense of wholeness. And this is what he had to say. I know no better word for it than integrity. It is the acceptance of one's own and only life cycle and of the people who have become significant to it as something that had to be, and that, by necessity, permitted of no substitutions. It thus means a new and different love of one's parents, free of the wish that they should have been different, and an acceptance of the fact that one's life is one's own responsibility. It is a sense of comradeship with men and women of distant times and of different pursuits. That's taken from Identity and the Life Cycle. What I like about the section of the branching of the road is it shows us that something very valuable, the most valuable thing, has come from our past, from all that has happened to us. And that is that it has brought us to the branching of the road. In that respect, we have received everything we needed. We have not been deprived of anything important because all of it has led to this decision point, and therefore it has served its purpose. It's an important place to come to within ourselves because in dealing with letting go of shame and guilt and forgiveness of our past, we have to come to a point where we say, I don't need any of it to have been different. Because as long as we say, oh, if only I had got this, that, or the other, we are resisting letting go of the ego. And so we will experience pain associated with practicing forgiveness. And we just won't be able to get over the hump, get over the hurdle in relation to particular people, in relation to particular events from the past, because we're still thinking that we could have got something valuable, rather than realising that all the hurts, all the deprivation, all of that has some meaning or some value in it. Not that we would wish that on anybody, okay, but it has some value and meaning to it if it brings us to the branching of the road. That is the only truly valuable thing anything can do for us. And with this in mind, the pain and the resistance associated with letting go of the ego can be lessened. That brings us to the end of the podcast. I hope you found it helpful. Tune in again. Thank you. Bye.